So, you want to buy an airplane. You want to buy a commercial airliner, the kind that carries 300 strangers across an ocean, because you have decided that this is a legitimate investment vehicle. And honestly, you are not wrong to think that. A brand new narrow-body aircraft, like a Boeing 737 MAX, lists for somewhere around $120 million. A wide body like the Airbus A350 sits closer to $300 to $400 million, depending on configuration. These are serious assets held by serious institutions. They do it because commercial aircraft, when structured correctly, are one of the most sophisticated financial instruments on the planet. The first advantage of aircraft ownership that nobody explains properly is the sheer mobility of the asset itself. Think about what happens when you invest $120 million into a commercial office tower in a mid-tier city and that city's economy quietly falls apart. You own a building, it sits on land. You cannot relocate it, you cannot redeploy it. You cannot escape the local market that is actively destroying its value. An airplane operates on an entirely different logic. If the carrier leasing your narrow-body jet runs into financial trouble in Southeast Asia, you don't absorb the loss. Your repossession team coordinates a ferry flight, the aircraft gets repositioned to a maintenance facility in a neutral jurisdiction. Within weeks, it's wearing a fresh livery and generating revenue for a fast-growing budget carrier somewhere in Africa or the Middle East. The asset follows the demand. That is a structural advantage almost no other asset class can replicate. Second, when you own a commercial aircraft, you are almost certainly not in the business of operating it. The actual flying, the crew management, the fuel procurement, the ground handling, none of that is your problem. What you offer is a dry lease. Under this arrangement, you hand a fully airworthy aircraft to an airline. They assume every single operational cost. In exchange, they sign a long-term contract typically running 10 to 12 years. On a modern narrowbody, that contract generates somewhere around $400,000 per month in lease revenue. Run that out over a decade, and you are looking at roughly $48 million in contracted cash flow from a single aircraft before you account for residual value. You hold the title, you collect the payments. Third, and this is where governments quietly become your partners. Aircraft ownership comes with tax treatment that most investors never encounter in other asset classes. Aviation authorities in the United States and Ireland have built accelerated depreciation schedules that allow owners to write down a substantial portion of an aircraft's purchase price in the early years of ownership. Far faster than the plane actually loses its operational utility. An airframe that will safely carry passengers for 25 years can be depreciated aggressively in the first 5. It's a mechanism for legally reducing the tax burden on billions of dollars in earnings across the entire corporate structure. That dual function is genuinely rare. Fourth, even the death of the asset is profitable. Around the 25-year mark, an airframe has endured enough pressurization cycles that continued passenger service becomes economically and regulatorily impractical. The plane's book value on your balance sheet has long since reached zero. But it doesn't simply disappear. It flies one last time to a desert storage facility, places like Victorville in California or Marana in Arizona, where it enters a methodical disassembly process called parting out. The CFM or Pratt engines are extracted and sold into the secondary market for millions of dollars each. Landing gear assemblies, avionics systems, auxiliary power units, interior components. All of it gets certified and resold to operators around the world. A completely retired narrowbody with no remaining commercial value as an aircraft can still yield $5 million or more in harvested parts. If all of that makes aircraft ownership sound like a frictionless path to compounding wealth, you are making a very dangerous mistake. The commercial aviation market doesn't just punish bad decisions, it punishes bad timing, bad luck. Occasionally decisions that were perfectly reasonable when you made them. The first thing you need to reckon with is the engine. A modern turbofan engine is an extraordinarily complex piece of engineering. It accounts for up to 40% of the total value of the aircraft it's attached to. Aviation regulators mandate that these engines be torn down completely at defined cycle intervals. Individual titanium fan blades inspected by ultrasound. Hot section components replaced, the entire assembly rebuilt from the core outward. A single engine shop visit on a current generation power plant costs somewhere between $8 and $10 million. If your lessee defaults on the lease precisely when a major overhaul is due, you have just inherited an aircraft that cannot legally fly without a $20 million cash injection. If you didn't structure aggressive monthly maintenance reserve payments into the lease from day one, that bill is entirely yours. Technological obsolescence is the second catastrophic risk, and it arrives without warning and without mercy. The commercial aviation market prices efficiency with brutal precision because jet fuel is an airline's single largest variable cost. When Airbus launched the A320neo with engines that burned 15% less fuel than the previous generation, the resale and lease market for older A320 collapsed. Top-tier carriers immediately began demanding the newer model and shedding older aircraft at whatever rate the market would bear. Owners of older fleets found themselves competing for second-tier operators and cargo conversions at deeply discounted lease rates. A 15-year-old narrowbody cannot be re-engined to match the aerodynamic performance of a next-generation design. Remember the mobility advantage, the ability to fly your asset away from a failing market in the middle of the night? That same global footprint is also your most dangerous exposure. When you place a jet with a foreign carrier, you are extending trust not just to that airline, but to the legal system of an entire sovereign nation. That trust can evaporate overnight. In 2022, when sweeping sanctions were imposed on Russia following the invasion of Ukraine, Western lessors immediately terminated their leases and demanded the return of their aircraft. Russia declined. The government passed domestic legislation re-registering foreign-owned jets as Russian state property, effectively nationalizing over 400 commercial aircraft worth more than $10 billion. Those planes did not come back. The final and arguably most structurally dangerous feature of aircraft ownership is the debt. Almost nobody acquires a $120 million aircraft with unencumbered cash. The standard structure involves a 20% equity contribution and 80% debt, typically financed through specialized aviation lending facilities. When lease rates are strong and aircraft are flying, this leverage magnifies your returns considerably. During a global shock, a pandemic, a financial crisis, a sustained spike in oil prices, airlines stop paying lease rates almost immediately. They have no choice. But the aviation bank that financed 80% of your aircraft still expects its monthly payment without exception. If the market value of your fleet declines faster than you're paying down the principal on that debt, you find yourself holding collateral worth less than the loan secured against it. The banks call in the debt, they take the planes. So should you actually buy a commercial airplane? If you are looking for a stable, low-maintenance store of wealth, the honest answer is absolutely not. The commercial aviation market is an environment of genuine, sustained brutality. It's exposed to oil price shocks, sovereign political decisions, global health crises, technological discontinuities that can reprice your entire portfolio in a matter of months. The maintenance obligations alone require deep technical expertise and aggressive contractual protection just to avoid being wiped out by a single engine overhaul at the wrong moment. But if you have the financial architecture to support it, if you understand how to structure maintenance reserves, how to read depreciation schedules down to the engine cycle level, how to diversify across jurisdictions and carriers, how to leverage debt without becoming fragile to the inevitable downturns, then commercial aircraft leasing is one of the most elegantly constructed financial systems ever built. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you next time.